I think that there's no definitive winner already to the point where people are very comfortable with Kamala winning.
More than anything else, my Kamala support comes from my belief that it should not in any way be tolerated for a president to not agree to a peaceful transfer of power.
For sure.
And I feel like Trump and Elon, all these people are all geared up and ready to paint a narrative that this election was actually totally compromised, which I think is absolute bullshit. And that's something that I can't support at all. So in my life, I wouldn't be surprised if the next candidate who runs for president that I vote for is a Republican. That would not shock me. It's not going to be this guy who's spreading this misinformation about the election being stolen.
Yeah, for sure.
My vote will never go to someone who's spreading that bullshit.
100%. And the thing is with Kamala, I think with the street dudes, because like regular voters outside of us, like she was like the head DA of California.
Mm-hmm.
Her name's in like a lot of my friends' paperwork.
A lot.
Like all of them that's been sentenced as juveniles to life without when they wasn't supposed to and stuff like that. Her name pops up right there. So it's like it's hard for me to walk inside somewhere and vote for her, but I wouldn't vote for Trump either. I'd probably give that odd guy a vote.
The odd guy is essentially a vote for
whoever how somebody else makes the ballot. Like I think that I would go in there and just give him like a fucking vote this time.
That being said, I'd like to call attention to this. BET.com. No, Kamala Harris did not lock up thousands of black men for marijuana possession and other lies debunked.
Can we cite the source?
I wasn't talking about no weed.
We could get into all of it if we really want, but it's like this is already like very well established, and it seems like there's no hope for us getting past the misinformation that has been spread about this. So I would encourage everybody to do some research, because the idea that she locked up all these thousands of men is total bullshit.
Well, okay.
Critics often cite a figure of over 1,500 marijuana convictions under her leadership. According to the Mercury News, an investigative report revealed that from 2004 to 2010, Harris's office oversaw almost 2,000 marijuana convictions, both misdemeanor and felonies. And despite this, only 45 individuals were ultimately sentenced to state prison with no information available about their racial identity. So this is fake news that has been very, very much spread.
I'm not talking about weed though.
I mean, first of all, to cite the source of this,
we need to cite a source from you if you want to try to make this point.
Yeah,
that's from BET, correct?
I mean, obviously BET is pulling information from other sources. This right there, the Mercury News, is who they did an investigative report about this.
And let's
so anybody who wants to make the case for me that this is wrong needs to bring facts to the table and show me their source.
What I will say is there is definitely during Kamala's tenure in the DA position in California, there was a disproportionate amount of minorities that were incarcerated for crimes that
you're basing that on what?
I'm basing
a hunch.
No. Personal experience.
That's not going to do much for me.
I mean, I can bring up cases where my people is on the streets now, and she's the one who wasn't trying to let them get out and all that. They had to fight against her.
To be fair, this was all entirely during a period of time in which marijuana was very much illegal, and in particular,
I'm not talking about weed. Y'all talking about weed. I'm talking about
this part is about weed.
Yeah. That article is specifically referring to marijuana, which is somewhat misleading when you're looking at the overall scope.
But also the idea that a DA was not going to lock people up for trafficking drugs is kind of hard to imagine, right?
No, I understand what you're saying, but the matter in which she was so aggressive about it and the disproportionate amount of minorities that were prosecuted despite arrests, and those ratios are like a little bit alarming. However, overall, that doesn't mean that Trump is necessarily a perfect candidate or anything to that degree. I'm just calling it like I see it. And a lot of the grievances that people have towards Kamala or based on this, particularly in the state of California.
This is my thing. It's like the standard that she is being held to seems unbelievably unfair, because people are reaching for absolutely anything they could possibly say about her. Let me just draw attention to this. One more quick Google. Trump, Epstein. This information came out this week. Audio recordings of Jeffrey Epstein talking about how Trump was basically his best friend, my closest friend for 10 years. Now, I implore everybody out there to just think about how much has been made of Bill Clinton's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. How much has been made of like the idea of there being a Democratic Epstein-involved pedophile cabal, etc. Jeffrey Epstein came out and said that Trump was his closest friend for 10 years. This is an old audio recording. Have we heard anything about this? Like, Trump is allowed to get away with literally anything
because he's crazy.
If the right was honest, this would be getting massive amounts of exposure, and instead they're just ignoring it.
Yeah.
So it's like these candidates are being held to very, very, very different standards.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I said in the real world, the only reason why I myself wouldn't vote, and I wouldn't vote for Trump either, is because personally, I have people with her name in their paperwork. And I wouldn't do it. But if anybody else, like, and I told my mom that too, like, yeah, I see why y'all going for it. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't vote for her. Just due to, like, I'm a criminal. You know, that's why they don't need felons to vote. We already biased. We already seen that.
But you know about Trump and the Central Park Five?
Yes.
Trump is fucked
I mean, those
up.
motherfuckers were innocent, and he was going on a media tour claiming that they deserve the death penalty and shit. It's like, if you want to, like, get somebody as your president who's going to be compassionate towards criminals, I just don't think that Trump is the guy. I'm going to be real with you.
But that's why I said I'm not going to vote for Trump. It's not
right.
I wouldn't vote for Trump either. It just was, I'd rather Kamala in office. If you want me to, I'd rather Kamala in office, but I'm not voting for
So let's remove the two candidates and just look at the two parties and essentially what the primary concerns are of each party. Democrats are concerned about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh my God, what an insane oversimplification.
Hold on.
I mean, don't you care more about policy and like their plans for the nation?
I'm speaking of the policies.
I know, but I just feel like that's like such a bizarro, like right-wing talking point.
Hold on. So that's not one of the top five.
I agree that DEI is cringe, but I also think it has a place in our society. I was just at a school meeting and like they're heavily emphasizing diversity, and it's like, on one hand, kind of cringe. On the other hand, I get why it's important for a private school to want to have a nice mix of different races and people from different backgrounds, socioeconomic, et cetera. I mean, to sum up the Democratic Party as if it's all just, all they care about is DEI. I mean,
look up the policies and the concerns of each of the campaigns. And one of the top five is that. You know
Trump tried to steal the election.
A lot of hate in this world wouldn't even... it wouldn't even transpire if everybody grew up with each other, though. If it was diversified and everybody knew that everybody were regular humans too.
Of course.
Like, it comes from being segregated. Like, it's a white neighborhood, it's a black neighborhood, it's white school. And even though it's not like really segregated, but this is how life still is on the low. And it's like, we're not used to you guys. So we can build whatever type of hate for you guys in our mind. And then when we finally do go off and want to do something that's going to go hurt somebody else, like, that doesn't look like us because they don't look like us.
Okay. And if we're really trying to push I agree with what you're saying. And if we're going to be pushing a pro-Kamala agenda, let's look at what
I'm not really pushing a pro-Kamala agenda so much as I just would never be able to vote for Trump. And I don't really understand how anybody who has a fair moral compass would be able to support that kind of person getting into office.
I didn't vote for Trump.
I didn't vote for anybody. Because to me, my vote is entirely ceremonial because we live in California, which is obviously going to go for the Democratic candidate regardless. Being that it's entirely ceremonial, I don't feel like either of these motherfuckers deserves any kind of ceremony. So being that, I didn't bother to vote. I don't give a fuck.
No, and me neither. And ultimately, a lot of people are looking at things that don't really have a bigger effect on the issues that people are concerned about.
So wait, you gave us this good right-wing speech and you didn't even vote for Trump either?
No.
But it is pointless to vote for anyone in California, really. I mean, obviously, like down ballot, all the other shit, that's worth voting for.
Yeah. You got to vote on the props and all that shit. Like, I'm big on.
I saw Lena researching every single other thing on the ballot last night. Every single like proposal, she was doing her Googles on every single one. I'm sorry,
They give you a booklet. What happened to the little pamphlet that gives you the pros and the cons, or the right wing?
But here's the thing, like
that tells you.
What's the right wing concerned about? One of the most important things, or the left wing, and I'll give y'all this, and this is why, and this is as somebody whose entire family are consummate Democrats, major contributors to Kamala's campaign, all that. All right, reproductive rights. I agree. I lean very far left when it comes to that. It's a woman's choice. You know what I mean?
that's another reason I think Trump's losing this election.
Well, that's
what are you trying to say?
Abortion has radicalized a huge percentage of women in this country, and the rights attempts to overturn a woman.
Trying to cut it off.
Okay, so they overturned Roe versus Wade, which is basically like the thing that was making abortion like fully legal in America. And
which,
now,
by the way, is the most important legal case of like the past 100 years.
Right, and so this is the thing about the Republicans is that they know that banning abortion is like an extremely unpopular position in terms of the entirety of the country, and they have been trying to not talk about it at all in the lead up to the actual election. They've been not talking about it
at all
because they know it's a losing case, but they can't separate the fact that the Republican Party has so many diehard anti-abortion people that are going to absolutely, if he gets elected, work towards making it more difficult to obtain an abortion.
I just don't get it. Like, I mean, I feel like you said, it's the woman's choice, but then it's like, what is the reason for you not like? You can't see that somebody's not in a position to have babies. Like, what happens if like a 12-year-old, like those grape cases that turn into pregnancy?
Real YouTuber right there.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
Real YouTuber. No, I agree. My perspective has always been, I would way rather a woman be able to terminate her pregnancy than to have an unfit mother be forced to raise a kid that is obviously going to end up with a fucked up childhood, probably end up living a life of crime. The last thing that this country needs is more unwanted kids whose parents are not paying the full appropriate amount of attention to them. Even just beyond that, it's like, who the fuck am I to tell a woman what to do with her body? I don't want to live in the kind of country that takes that upon themselves.
Well, and it comes down to this. So it's like, when it comes to social issues, I lean really far left. Issues like this, I'm in 100% agreement. When it comes to how our money should be allocated and the things that are important as far as like national defense and economy and the way funds are appropriated, I'm leaning a little bit further right. So that's why in this instance, neither one of these candidates captivated me to cast a vote.
I feel that.
So you think Trump he's in it for the free bands?
I'll tell you what.
He's in it for himself, period. That's my assumption about him. He's not.
He's finna have more money if he wins.
He's not ideological. That's the difference. People always want to do this Trump-Hitler comparison. Hitler had a vision for the world. Now, it may have been evil, but you know, he had a real idea of what he wanted the world to become. I don't think Trump has it. I think Trump just only gives a fuck about himself and whatever suits him.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, what is the United States beyond a corporation, right?
But I think to a lot of us, the United States is a symbol and a representation of what we think that the world can be. And I believe in American exceptionalism. And I think that, you know, the reason why we take on aiding wars like protecting Ukraine, helping Israel fight against, Iran and whatnot, I think that's because we see ourselves as having a responsibility to help the rest of the world. And I don't think that Putin should just be able to take over Ukraine just because he has more money and weapons, you know, and I think that America standing by Ukraine is, you know, it's important. But
it's like this. I agree with everything you said. However, when I think about it from a logistical perspective, I look at third world countries or countries even that have first world areas, but other regions that operate in a third world capacity, like India, like China, these places where there's extreme poverty. In fact, a considerable amount of the continent of Africa as well as Western Asia, aka the Middle East. And we look at all these regions, and we look at like the way that people struggle and and the way they're doing it, and it's like, okay, this is the way the majority of the world lives. So should we not make sure that we, the people around us in our immediate vicinity, are safe from the perils that exist outside of this comfortable bubble, aka the United States? Because the
United Nations.
Well, I was about to say,
Uh,
United Nations is a concept that really doesn't truly exist. Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, it's us versus y'all. Yeah, we might be aligned in certain capacities, but at the end of the day, we're going to protect ours and our greater interests. And how much of that is important to us?
I think not allowing Putin to conquer the globe is important for our safety as well in the long run.
I agree.
Now, granted, it seems extremely expensive, and it is kind of insane to think about how much money we're tossing at this war. But I mean, ultimately, I don't think we should just roll over and let the bad guys win. That's just me.
Nah,
I don't want to be.
I don't think that while we in, and I know that it's not a money thing, but like we in debt, and we're still dishing out. They should at least have something like they can cut funding a little bit. Like it's something they can do to where it pleases the people and we still aid our allies. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It might be in budget though. They just post the fucking how much they spend on there and the world goes crazy. Like it might all be in budget of us going further in the debt because we probably could only like accumulate so much more debt a year.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to come across as pro-Trump as I probably am in this conversation, and a lot of it's just for the sake of conversation. But who do you think has a better relationship with Putin and Russia, etc.?
Yeah, Trump never said a bad word about Putin, even when it was unbelievably obvious that he should have condemned his actions. And to me, that's like one of the scariest things about electing Trump is the fact that he seemingly has no ability to be honest when it comes to speaking about other countries that are behaving badly. And Putin is like the worst of the worst. And Trump never said anything bad about him at all. That to me is terrifying.
But I mean, don't they got like relations? Didn't they get caught?
They're both like the same dude,
together.
You know. They're both basically have like the same mentality.
So he's probably like, "I'll do what you say. We'll figure something out. You guys put Trump back in office."
Trump hates that he's not able to behave with impunity the way that Putin does.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of my whole point, though. Who do you feel like would have better control over Putin and that whole entire fiasco? Which
I want someone who's willing to go to war with Putin and stand up business and make it clear that we're not going to deal with his bullshit.
With Putin, what does that entail? That's a dynasty that includes Russia, Iran, and North Korea. All those fools clicked up.
Fuck all of them. They're all evil.